Welcome back, incredible listeners, to Third Eye Talks. Ooh, it's going to be such a good episode. I am so excited to welcome my guest for today, Victoria Pippo. She is a multidimensional healer, faith-based leader, innovative businesswoman, yes, and spiritual guide specializing in psychic development, energy healing, and interference protection. And she is just a joy already. Hi, Victoria.
Hi, Naz. Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm very excited for our conversation today, which is going to be about something that I think is always important, but it's going to be especially important as we're stepping into all of this new earth energy. And
Yes.
that is faith-based leadership, right? How to lead with clarity, how to lead with power, and how to lead, especially with a deep connection to God's guidance.
Mm.
So excited for today's conversation. Tell us first, before we get into the nitty-gritty, how did you get started on this path, and how are you here where you are now? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you giving me the mic, and I'm excited. I hope that this really provides value, insight, synchronicity, confirmation for your listeners today. As a child, I actually grew up as a childhood performer. So from a very young age, I had wild dreams. Some might say that I probably had my third eye activated at a very young age, but at the time, I honestly just saw the life that I was living. That is totally a topic for another day, and knew that there was more for me. I always had this hunger for more. And I knew that if I wanted more to happen in my life, then I would have to forge a path despite my circumstances, which in hindsight, I can tell you that was faith. I needed faith and belief to create a life different than what I came from. So
Mhm.
that coupled with the performance element of being able to portray other people for a living, be able to try on these really strong, independent women that were iconic in the musical theater industry was like, that was really at the time, unknowingly, I would say the birthing of my faith and my walk with God, because I loved storytelling. I loved imagination. And I also loved in many ways escapism. I loved the art of escape and being able to play in a reality of my choice. And
Mm.
so I was a Disney performer at the end of my performance career. I worked on the Disney Cruise Line ships and I
Mhm.
portrayed some of the most iconic characters. I got to play Elsa and sing Let It Go for 9 months. I got to play Belle. And obviously, if you know, you know. To me, Belle is one of the most extraordinary characters for adventure in the classics. It's very rare. Like I felt like Belle was the character that was like, actually, I'm not going to be Snow White and just get like lured into a house with, a bunch of dwarves. And I'm not just going to go to sleep and hope my prince will come. Like I want more for myself. And so at this time, I was performing and I started to really start to question why I was the common denominator in my life, which is oftentimes a big catalyst for a lot of our awakenings. This led me to meditation. The infusing, I think, the blending of worlds between always playing in an alternate world and
Mhm.
also being able to meditate. And because of that, getting into deeper meditations, this led me to my first contact with a spirit. It was my grandfather. I was very deep in meditation. I had never met him before. And his voice came through as clear as this conversation today and said, I am your grandfather. I am your spirit guide, and I've been with you your whole life.
Oh my goodness.
So I ran upstairs and I called my mom because I had never met my grandfather before. And now I'm trying to, again, go back to hindsight and say, did this happen as a kid? And this moment was the founding moment of my life because she said, yes. You would always say, Grandpa's here, Grandpa's here. And I said, okay, because I felt him on the left side of my body. So then I wanted to confirm, did I ever say, like, he's over here, he's over here? She goes, yeah, you would point to anyone's body on the left side and say, Grandpa's here with us.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that was the moment of like, whoa, a miracle moment that came when I needed to know that there was more. And that piercing through the veil, I mean, 5.5 years later, it's been that moment that truly set me on this path.
Oh my goodness. Gave me goosebumps. And hi, Grandpa, because I'm sure you're somewhere in.
What's up, Gramps? Welcome to the party.
Hi, Grandpa. Welcome to Third Eye Talks. We're so glad to have you here. And so, okay, I love your story because I love how dreamy it sounds like you have, like you've really gone into your creative world and you have this wonderful imagination. And I love that when it comes to connecting with God, right? So do you feel, I guess that's one of my very first questions that's coming up immediately is, do you feel that creativity is a pathway to connecting initially with God?
I couldn't say otherwise. I
Yeah.
would say 100%. A lot of us who are probably listening to this have found different pathways to try to make sense of why we're different. I
Mm.
assume the reason why we're here listening to Third Eye Talks is because we don't really resonate with the herd mentality.
Yes.
There's something more, there's something different, and we actually resonate with being a misfit. And I find that art is that channel for us to process all of the empathy that I think a lot of us as light workers come on this planet being like, I don't understand why I feel so much. And art is that creativity piece where I think God says, let me show you who you are to me. Let me
Mm,
show you where I dance. Let me show you where I exist. It gives me like such waves of emotion because that has been, I think, the greatest outlet. Like my connection with art my entire life was the way that I had direct access to God.
mm. I love that and I applaud that. My listeners, everyone tuning in, they may say, okay, what if I don't have that? Because, lives, right? And you get into the routine of your life and you get, you have your job, but you're not, it's a job that you do because it's a job that you studied or that makes you money. And they're not really in that place to connect to their creativity.
Mm.
And thereby they may be missing some of that energetic connection to spirit. So how would you, if somebody came into your world like that, what would be the very first thing that you might ask them to do or tell them, here, try this, right? What would be your try this thing?
Oh, I think this is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking it. I would say that it costs you nothing to pray over truth and be open to receive. God is
Mm,
in the truth. So, something as simple as if I'm on the right track today, please show me, and then insert sign that you're looking for, such as a dime, an eagle, a crow, a kind message from somebody, 111, asking for signs and synchronicities in your day job, in the monotony of your day. Ask for God to channel through these physical tools that we have. And something as simple as in this moment, I set an intention to be open to receive signs, synchronicities, and confirmations as I walk into my job today, as I walk into my workplace today, that I'm on the right track. And I love to add in this little sizzle, and it's make it so obvious I cannot miss it.
yes.
That way it hits you over the head and you're not making a coffee in your day job and then you see 111 and you brush over it because Randy's bothering you at the workplace. It's like make it so obvious. You hit your head unfortunately on the microwave and you close it and you go, oh, no way. Like those signs. So pray over the truth, be open to receive, and then ask it to make it so obvious that even if you're in a day-to-day life where you don't get to have an easel or a piano on hand or a script that you can play into, that you can still play and dance with the way that the creator God works through us and through physical tools.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I always tell people I have this wonderful client who said this to me, and I was like, yes, exactly. She said, life is going to happen. I can choose to either see it as this practical thing that's happening, or I can see it as magical and
Yes.
connecting to spirit and having this spirituality weave through my life helps me to see it with magic, right? So you're right. You don't have to have a piano, an easel, sing, any of that, but starting to call spirit into your life is a way of being creative and starting to get into that creative energy. So I love that. Now, what happens if you ask, which I love your suggestion, I think it's spot on. What happens if you ask and you get the response that is, you're not on the right path. You're not doing what I called you to do, right? Now what? What do we do there?
Well, I think that that is probably a very clear sign, which sometimes we get. We
Mm,
get those, the door is slammed shut. And I'm going to make it very clear. Now, what I will say to anybody who might be receiving that sign is you probably had those signs multiple times that led up to this point. And so the gift of spirituality is it allows us to look at the lessons that led us to this point. And
mhm.
so if anybody experiences this, I'm sure they probably feel a lot of human emotion about that. How did I get here? Why does this happen? What is wrong with me? But I bet that you already knew that this was going to come because you have this knowing and you had those signs before. And so maybe this is an opportunity for you to recognize that you already knew yourself well enough long before God had to make it so clear in a sign that said, nope, you're not on the right track. Abort, detour, redo. And that might be the silver lining is that, when we're not on the right path, and I've been there before, it will come with a kaboom and it will feel like the end, but it is the beginning of the new. And if you can remember that while also noticing all of the signs that came before, where spirit tried to nudge and nudge and nudge, and then finally said, you know what, just throw her off so she can get to the point. It was all a gift, and it helps you minimize that time where you abandon your truth the next cycle.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes. So it's so funny. Right before I jumped on here to record this, I was in a class. I was a guest speaker in a class. And this is one of the things I was saying. We bring change on through what our heart is guiding us to do. And then we try to blame the outside world. Like, why is this happening to me? Why did I get this big kaboom over the head? You've been creating that. You've been manifesting that from your heart because you already knew that this wasn't the thing for you, right? So accountability, and you can disagree, but do you agree with accountability for the circumstances that you're creating is one of the ways to start to really have faith-based leadership?
Yes. Yes, because how can you rewrite a new story if you're still like, but I'm a victim to everything that came before?
Mm,
I can't be a victor of my reality and want to consciously co-create while I'm still unconsciously holding on to the fact that I need to hold on to my victimhood here. They can't exist. You can't be a victor of your life and also a victim at the same time.
yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
And it's so uncomfortable because we have to be brave enough to know that the art is in the story.
Hmm.
And no great artist ever wrote an album that was like, and then the sun was shining and everything was really great. And then my life got better and it kept getting better. Sucks for you. Like, no one ever created a magic album from life. They created it in death. And that's the gift that God gives us is trust in me with all of your heart, way beyond your own understanding, and I will make your path straight. He's not saying, and it's going to be very easy because you're my chosen ones and you're on this path of awakening. So I'm going to make it easy. That was never promised. But what was promised is if you have faith, blind faith, usually, especially in times like this when your path needs to get course corrected, you will always be blessed 10 times over. And you will tell such an amazing story because that's actually the best part of any story is when you actually write it in this moment. This is where your leadership is defined. This is where your hero's journey is created. And this is where the best is actually yet to come.
Oh, I love that. And I love you mentioning the hero's journey. It's so important. I think when you know it, I've talked about it. I interviewed a friend who's an author, and we talked about it in depth, how life is just, it's the hero's journey. And if you know it, you're going to know what's going to happen next, right? You know what the
Yes.
next phase is about. But I love that. So you talk about blind faith, right? And this idea of navigating life, saying, I just fully trust you,
Mhm.
right? And us being, from what I study and do astrologically, us entering a time where it's always been important,
Yeah.
but now we're working with some things universally as a collective that are really asking us to
Mm.
have faith.
Agreed.
How do we, how do we increase that? How do
Mm.
we really integrate that into our way of leading our lives?
I'm going to offer a unique perspective, and I hope that your listeners will kind of take this ride with me. I think that faith comes first and trust comes second.
Mm,
Because when I lean into faith, I actually don't know if it's going to work out. So, how can I trust that it's going to work out? Faith to me feels like a surrender. And trust feels like the byproduct of leaning into faith because God always shows. It might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but God will always show you the path and the blessings that come from that path. And then my trust gets fortified. Because to be honest, when I first started my spiritual awakening journey, I did not trust. I did not know what that felt like. And especially due to the indoctrination that we inevitably go through in our earlier stages of life, trust is like whacked out of us as early as, by the way, Santa's not real. By the way, Tooth Fairy, that was me. Like it is indoctrinated in us to calcify our trust in this
mm,
reality, our trust in God. And
mm,
so, number one step with blind faith is that it has to feel right. And feeling right and feeling emotional are different things. Especially as an energy healer, this is something I teach a lot. The
mm,
difference between truth and emotion. When I'm acting on emotion, I'm happy, I'm so excited, this is going to be the right thing. The flip side of that is, oh my God, what did I do?
mm,
What if I didn't make the right? Oh my God, I feel shame. I feel frustration. So we don't want to move from emotion. We actually want to move from truth. And anyone who knows what truth feels like will tell you that it's not necessarily emotional. It's a yes. Yes, we might have a feeling about that truth for sure. Like, oh my God, I'm afraid. What if it doesn't work out? But
mm,
truth feels right. That's God. God
mm,
is truth. God is in what is right, what is just. And it's going to require you, once you feel that, to blend the concoction of, I have faith, I'm going to be brave.
mm,
That's the recipe. And then what you get in return is that trust in God, that trust in yourself that I feel comes as a byproduct of listening to what feels right and honoring that that's your intuition, your body, your higher self saying that is the right path. And it's
mm,
not emotional, it's right. And that feels central for me. When I feel something that feels right, yeah, my
mm,
nervous system might be, oh my God, what? But the rightness is very central. And now
mm,
my next step is okay, I have faith in my bravery. And then my self trust grows. And then my fortification with God grows. Because I think
mm,
some people say, I trust the universe. I trust the universe. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're saying you trust as long as your package comes in Amazon shipping, as long as your money comes in the time of which you said it. That's not
mm,
trust. You need
mm,
faith. You need faith because when you have faith, that's detaching completely from your expectation and agenda. And
mm,
then your trust grows. True trust, unconditional trust, the trust that God gives you as a byproduct of being brave and having faith.
mm. Oh my gosh. That is, yes, it's an experiment, right? It's like
Yes, great.
I'm gonna try this because
Mhm.
that's I trust, right? I trust this is my truth. you move in that way, and then God shows you, yes, you're right. And then you do it again and you repeat it and you repeat it over and over until you build that faith, right?
Yes.
That's the thing. Okay. So I love that. I love that. I resonate with that so much. And I agree with you. That is the starting point. You have to come to center and move and understand that it's not when you want it, it's when it's right. Right?
Totally. And the fool in the tarot explains that. It's the chick who's leaving the nest. I have a funny story. I was staying at this Airbnb and there was this robin's nest that was created the time that we got there. The entire time we were there, about a little over a month and change. On the final day, believe it or not, of course, the chicks were ready to leave the nest. And I got to watch the chick leave the nest. First one leaves, whoa, super wobbly, but finally makes it. Makes it to the ground. The mum comes and grabs it, and then they head over. The second one leaves, whoa, and hits my car. Hits my car in the driveway, like, ooh, rough landing, my friend. It's like super disoriented. You can see it's trying to like find its ground, but its mum comes. The Fool card is very similar to what it feels like to be in faith. You might hit the car,
Mm-hmm.
but you're leaving to learn how to fly. That is faith. You're leaving because the nest, ultimately, you have outgrown. And the
Mm.
only way you're going to find out what life is on the other side is if you risk the fact that you could probably be that chick that hit the car. But then if God is the mama robin, then you will always be provided for. And
Mm.
that story to me feels like such a representation of what faith is. Being in that fool position where you've outgrown the nest. And at some point, you're either going to die there or you're going to have to find out what's next. So you're going to have to be brave. You're going to have risk. You're not going to know if you're going to hit the car or you're going to have a smooth landing. But you're going to go because you've outgrown it and because it's right.
Mm. And isn't that life, right? We outgrow it's designed, the process of life, for us to outgrow things consistently.
Yeah,
To
and it's such a theme to what you've even said on your 2025 podcast today was about change and how it's inevitable. We come here to change. And how can I possibly know what life is like outside of the nest from the perspective of the nest? It's
Yeah,
impossible.
it's impossible. Yes, you're right. Changes how we build our relationship with God, being open to it, understanding that it's always working in our favor. I really do believe that.
Yep.
So I love what you said about the mom always, the mom always provided. You were all they were all provided for equally, right? So when it comes to God, how do we grow that belief that we will always be provided for? And more so, how do we travel that road of like, I really want this already and it's not coming up yet. Will I be provided for if I take this risk? Is God going to provide for me? How have you navigated that in the past? And like, how would you recommend someone do that?
Steve Jobs, I think, don't quote me, but I believe it was Steve Jobs who said, you cannot connect the dots forward. You can only connect the dots backwards. And that's very true. People want to look at time and space and say, why hasn't it happened yet? Instead of look at all of the ways of which it ended up happening, not when I wanted it, but when I needed it.
Mm,
Your
not
entire
a bell to ring when people.
right? Your entire life, while it may not have been easy or
Mm,
simple, it has been perfect for the lessons that you have needed to learn on a soul level. And the free will that you have exercised to make that manifest. And so you're not going to be able to look forward and say, well, why isn't it happening? And what if it's not going to work out? You have to look backwards at all of the times in your life where It actually worked out in the right time when it was the perfect order for the greatest natural order to occur afterwards. So, for anybody who's listening, who's been wanting to manifest, who believes that their relationship with God has grown deeper, and I believe you, the best way is to see all of the ways of which He provided up until this moment right here, right now. And in the times where it's been the hardest for me, and I'm like, I don't know if you are going to provide for me, I just look at December of 2024 and November of 2024, October, September, all the way to my birth. He never promised me it would be easy, but He would promise that I would always, if I was obedient to the path that I came here to be on, my right and true path, He would always provide. And that has been evident. So stop trying to connect the dots forwards. It's a waste of your time and energy, but also your gratitude, your contentment, and your faith right now. And instead, count backwards and notice how often you have been provided for. Maybe it came a little too close to the, nervous system for you. Maybe it didn't come in the time of which you thought, but it always did.
Mm.
It
Mm.
always did. Therefore, it always will.
Yes. Yes. Oh my
It always
goodness.
will.
You're speaking my language, Victoria. Yes, that is it. I ask my clients, this is real, and any of my clients will say it. I tell them, keep a file. I know that some people are more logical about things, and I appreciate that. Keep a file of every time you thought, this is it. Like, how am I going to get out of this? And then you did.
Mhm.
And then the universe provided for you, and God brought you the perfect solution at the perfect time. And you had a huge win, and a solution C came up that you would have never thought of. There it was. And the greatest predictor of the future is the past. So,
Yep.
what can you tell yourself? Like you just said, connect the dots backwards. Go back and look every time you're provided for. Everything always works out. And I love that you added for the greatest good, right? Of
Yes.
everyone, because it's not just for us. God has to look at all the pieces, right?
Yes.
Everyone, making sure it's the right time for everyone. And then things happen. So I
Yep.
love, love, love this. Before, I want to hear all about where we can get together with you, where we can find you, how we can connect with you. But any last pearls of wisdom or anything that you would like to tell the listeners about faith-based leadership and leading their lives with clarity, power, and that connection to God? Anything else you want them to know? Maybe it's something presently uh there in the universal energy or individually.
I'm going to reference a little bit of your podcast episode that you made that I listened to this morning. That is the welcome to season 4 for those of you who haven't listened. And you talked about how we're in the year of the snake and we're in the year of 9. And I actually channeled that this year is actually called the year of the mother.
Mm.
It takes 9 months to go from an idea to life. And the birthing process, arguably for any woman in this space that has given birth, can say that that was probably the most pressure they had ever felt. And then, poof, miracle. The quote that I got from one of my spirit guides was something that already in January has been a mantra for me. And it was, from the pressure came something so beautiful, so miraculous, so perfect, you could not deny that it was God.
Mm.
And that right there is faith based leadership. Leadership is not, look what I can do. Leadership is, I am holding a lot of duality and still I rise in faith. And so if you're already noticing you're holding a lot of plates, probably you are as an entrepreneur, juggling it all, it's a lot and you're still having faith. Know that the pressure that you feel right now is going to create something so miraculous you cannot deny it's God. And if you just trust in God's perfect timing, it'll be so.
Mm. Ah, trust the timing, trust the timing. I love that, Victoria. All right, so tell us, how can we get in touch with you? How can we get involved in your world? And if we resonate with something in the episode today, how can we reach out to you?
Absolutely. I appreciate you for allowing a little bit of a conversation. So, I am the president and founder of a global school called the Sovereign Healer. I've been working with the Sovereign Healer methodology over the last 4 years of my psychic development, and now I've turned it into a global school.
Mm,
This teaches you how to need no external attunement and no external modality but meditation to be able to have all access to your psychic abilities, all of your clair gifts, direct connection with your spirit guides, and to be able to be a safe practitioner, energy healer in the world. This is my bread and butter. The Sovereign Healer School is for anybody. If you're an entrepreneur and you don't plan to be an energy healer, being able to have direct access to God and the truth through your own meditation, in my experience, is the most gratifying thing in the world. More than getting a reading from somebody else, more than looking to what the stars say. They're all influences, they're all mirrors, and they validate until they take away your growth. And so, what
mm,
I teach in the Sovereign Healer is you are a sovereign being. Once you learn different protocols and practices to learn how to ground your energy, cleanse it, protect it, and open it, you are unstoppable. And
mm.
so the Sovereign Healer is the main body of work that I've created. It's a 9-month school, and I would love to see you there if it feels aligned, and you're always more than welcome to reach out. The final thing I work on is called the Great Merge. It is a global light work movement for healers, for light workers who want to contribute to energy healing for the world. We go to different places around the world that's governed by my teams of spirit during particular portals. Interestingly enough, we're on the 111 today. So that's a good marker. We go to different portals during different times where we can create the greatest benevolent change for the world. And furthermore, after we do all of this light work for the planet that's of service to the collective energy, then we take all of the proceeds that we have left over and we give it to a collective cause of our agreement. So we've been able to donate over $30,000 to causes all over the world, from the Maui fires to the rainforest to the oceans, and we're just getting started. So when you
Mm,
feel called to contribute to the Great Merge, you're a light worker who is beyond self-service and wants to serve this Aquarian age. People
mm.
coming together with their gifts to perform light work for the world. And so the Great Merge and the Sovereign Healer, that's my bread and butter. And I really appreciate you for giving me the space to connect.
I love what you're doing. Oh my goodness. Ah, incredible work. Incredible work. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast. I do want to say, tell us your website and where we can find out about both of these initiatives you're working on.
Thank you. My website is
Okay.
victoriapippoinc.com. So like incorporated, if you will, victoriapippoinc.com. And then my Instagram is Victoria Pippo.
Perfect. I love that. And all of that information will be in the show notes, dear listeners. Victoria, it has been an honor to have you on the podcast. I have loved this conversation and I feel incredibly honored to have you and just thank you so much for being here, sharing what you know with us. And I can't wait to have you back. Let's do a part two at some point.
I would love nothing more. I feel so deeply connected to you and your mission. And the moment I felt your energy, it just honestly felt like a true Aquarian connection where it was like, ooh, we understand each other. And so if your listeners enjoy it, it would be an honor to be able to do a part two, especially based on feedback that they have that would be of service to them, would be fantastic.
I love it. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you
Bless
for
you.
being here. And to my wonderful listeners, I will see you next time on Third Eye Talks.
Amazing. Thank you, Naz.
You're welcome. Bye.